Yeah, you've already been super excited about the monitors. I mean, just like the glimmer in your eyes when you were talking about the different ones. So, what impresses you the most just from the lineup that you've seen so far? We all watched your video and you were diving in between the different ones, talking about the benefits here. But for you personally, what is the most impactful and the most innovative right now that we have here in the Asus lineup?
I think for me, the best part of what ROG are showing off is the range of monitors. You've got 27, 32, 34, 42, 48, 49 inches. So whatever size you want, obviously there are differences between them, but you've got something, however big your table is, you've got something that you can go for. And what we're seeing now is OLED across the range. And obviously that comes with a whole host of advantages. So I think my takeaway is just the number of options you have, and they're all extremely good and also quite expensive, but this is also cutting-edge tech.
When we're talking about users that say, okay, I want to upgrade to an OLED display, I'm really been thinking about it, and I would want to make the switch. Why would you recommend an Asus monitor compared to another product?
I mean, you're spoiled for choice with good monitors these days, which is fantastic for the consumer. You can't really get a bad one. And I'm lucky enough to review a whole bunch of them from lots of different brands. The reason I do often come back to Asus and ROG is that often they are just the most innovative. Like they bring stuff out that we haven't seen from others yet. And sometimes it's expensive, sometimes there are areas for improvement, but they're always exciting to cover. In fact, I would say across all of Asus's range, it's always fun for me as a tech YouTuber to cover their products. But I think the biggest concern people have with upgrading to OLEDs is burn-in. Yep. And it is a thing, it does exist, but we've had OLEDs for 10 years now or more, and that was definitely an issue earlier on. But with pixel refresh, screensavers, adaptive brightness, and if you just, as long as you don't abuse it, keep the same ticket tape or HUD on 12 hours a day, day in, day out, you're not going to have a problem. So really the advantages are faster refresh rate, those super deep inky blacks, you've got the wider color gamut, and if you've used an OLED TV or a monitor, you know that while it maybe can't have the same brightness as a mini LED in some cases, you can't beat that contrast.
You talked about brightness, and one of the features that we couldn't really dive into in the last segment, but I want to highlight again since you already brought it up in your video too. You were talking about the uniform brightness that exists on the monitor. Can you explain a little bit what the problem is and how it has been addressed here?
This is really interesting, the uniform brightness. So if any of you have used an OLED monitor from the last couple of years, you'll probably know that when you say take a small window, often a bright window, like something on Windows Explorer or whatever, and then you expand it to the full screen, the whole screen dims. I think it's a safety thing, so it's not burning in, it's a limitation of the hardware. So what we have now with ROG's uniform brightness, and this is, I believe across all their current and upcoming range, is that it doesn't change. You have the uniform brightness, whether it's a small 3% window or a 100% window. Now, caveat that with brightness, obviously, on a small window can be much higher if you want to in games. So when they talk about up to 1,000 nits, that is tested on a 3% window. Across the full screen, it's 250 nits, thereabouts, which is why it hits the display HDR True Black 400 standard. And I was having a good conversation with my buddy Vincent, who's out there somewhere from HDTV Test about that. So uniform brightness is helpful because it just makes, while it will limit you to a lower brightness across the display, it's less jarring when it goes from bright to dark, bright to dark. And if you're using it for work, which I do as well, I can edit my videos on these OLED displays, it's much more helpful and more comfortable to use.
Is that something where you feel like with the size that we talked about, the 4K, now with the uniform brightness, that it unlocked new things that you can do with your home setup where previously you were just a bit more limited?
Yes, I think the uniform brightness is like a nice to have, and certainly that is noticeable. I think the one for me is OLEDs have just got brighter, and that's always been a limitation of OLEDs compared to some rival display technologies. And now we're seeing us, up to 1,300 nits on the 34-inch. Peak HDR, mind. That's not across the whole panel. But what it allows you to do is get a better HDR experience, which is what you want when you have those incredible colors and deep inky blacks, as the cliche goes. And it's also better for just viewing content. whether it's your games or watching videos, or if you're settling down for a nice evening and putting on the Tech Chap on your YouTube, which is what I assume most people do of an evening.
Every evening.
I hope so.
We touched on the topic already with Trilux as we had the general talk about the monitors earlier. But what also blew me away a bit, as I mentioned, was the KVM Smart Switch. And that's something that I did not expect out of the monitor section. That you now have all of a sudden two systems that you can connect to a single monitor, transfer files, and just basically have a dedicated workstation, have a dedicated maybe gaming setup, a streaming setup, and have less interference between the two. That is a feature that I would have loved to see, but I didn't expect it to come out of the monitor part. So when you talk about innovation, this would be a really good example of where somebody just had the right idea. And I'm personally quite interested to see where that is going and how much more they can do with that maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it does require you to plug the KVM switch, the smart KVM switch we see now. It does require you to plug your peripherals into the monitor itself. Most people obviously plug it into their laptop or PC, so you have to bear that in mind. But I think as displays get bigger, there is more room side by side for having two windows. And so having picture by picture is one thing, which is great. And in the past, I might have my PS5 up there and my laptop or desktop PC here. I'm not quite sure why. I can't really do two things at once. But having the smart KVM switch does obviously allow you to not only use the same peripherals between the two, so you can literally drag your mouse from your desktop to your laptop device and, as you say, transfer files, which is pretty cool. I can't say it's something I've found myself using that much. I tend to do everything on a laptop personally, although I do have my desktop PC. But I think when you're getting to this high price and high level of monitor, you want every feature you can possibly get. And even if it's niche, even if only a handful of people want it, for those people, that'll be a reason to buy it. And I think giving them more options is great. And it's, as you say, I think it's a bit of magic how it actually happens. I have no idea.
You said earlier that one of the main reasons you're here at Gamescom is the new OLED displays that we have here. So was the trip worth it?
Yeah, it was. Of course it was. I'm looking forward to a couple of beers afterwards. But yes, this trip's been fantastic. Asus ROG have been hosting me, and I had access yesterday to play around with the tech and some of the technical experts there. They're incredibly knowledgeable and been very helpful guiding me around it. And there's a lot of technical detail with these, and a lot of it can go over people's heads. And but the end of the day is they're fantastic monitors. I personally use an ROG monitor at home, and I'm looking forward to hopefully reviewing these soon on the channel properly in the studio.
Absolutely love the passion, and I'll join you for one of those beers later.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for being here. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and of course we're going to dive into a few more segments later on. This was more of a tech analysis of the OLED displays here, so thanks a lot again for watching and staying with us, and I'll see you on the next one.